What's going on, guys? This is Nick from Budget Bill Garage, and today we're going to take a look at the small block Chevy I picked up in the last video with the El Camino. I paid 300 bucks for this thing, and honestly, I knew absolutely nothing about it when I went and got it. I got a phone call from a buddy. He said he knew a guy that had a small block, had everything on it, from the oil pan to the carburetor. It was 300 bucks, and he was pretty positive it ran, so I went and I picked it up. Now, like I said, I did pay 300 bucks for this thing, and honestly, even if it's overall not a great engine, 300 bucks is a really good price considering we got an HEI distributor that looks to be in pretty good shape. We got a Edelbrock carb, which is without a doubt rebuildable. Honestly, these things, they take some abuse. You put a quick rebuild and cleaning them, and honestly, they just keep working. And we even got an Edelbrock Performer, intake manifold as well. And some, actually, these are kind of cool valve covers. I like them. Not usually my style, but I really like a good cast aluminum valve cover, and I'm pretty stoked on this whole thing. Like I said, for 300 bucks, this thing is awesome. Now, when I get a call like that, or when I look at anything, anytime I'm looking at a small block Chevy, I just assume it's a 350 small block and decide whether or not I want to deal with it. However, I picked this thing up in the dark. I didn't even look at it, honestly. I loaded it up, we strapped it down, I looked at some of his cars, and we took off. And I haven't actually looked at it since then. I took it out of the truck, I put it on this thing. I pulled the flywheel off. Well, I pulled the flex plate off, and right away I knew it wasn't a 350. There's a couple things on a small block Chevy that are kind of dead giveaways as to whether or not it's, a 350 or something smaller. It had a weighted flywheel on it. None of the 350s are lower, 305, 307, 327. They all had non-weighted flex plates. Since this thing had a weighted flex plate on it, it was either a 383 like it had been stroked out, or it was a 400. So I pulled the number right here on the block and got online, did a casting number check, and it'll tell you pretty much what it is. It turns out it's a 400. It also says it's either a 2-bolt or a 4-bolt, so hopefully it's a 4-bolt. What we're going to do now is take a few things off, look at a few things, kind of stuff to look at when you're buying an engine this complete. So yeah, first thing I'll do is I'll pull a valve cover off, look at everything, see if there's a lot of gumminess and nastiness all over the valve train, and if not, we'll check the oil returns, make sure those are clean, and then from there, I'm going to flip this thing over and we're going to pull the oil pan off and see if I can figure out if it's got the stock crank in it or not. I'm not going to really bother pulling off the intake until I see what's at the bottom and kind of decide from there what I should do. So yeah, let's pull some of that stuff off. Alright, so pulled this thing off. Everything looks pretty good. A couple things right away I'm looking for. Is any nastiness built up in here in this area, down in my oil returns on either side. And it's nice to kind of pull the oil out and see what that looks like. This thing actually looks pretty nice. Yeah. Also, while you have the valve cover off, you want to make sure you find the casting number on the head as well. Alright. Next up, when you got a new engine like this, drain the oil, obviously, check the oil, see if you see any metal shavings, check if it's got that weird milky color, like coffee with too much milk in it. That might be indication that the head gasket's blown, or even something else in it's wrong. So, let's just keep going. So with the oil pan off, we can see everything in here is pretty clean. I'm very happy with it so far. It is a 4-bolt main. If you look right here, there's a bolt here and a bolt here on the main cap, and of course 2 on the other side. That's what makes it a 4-bolt main. When people are talking about it, you'll only have 2 bolts instead of the 4. So that's obviously how you can tell. What I'm going to do now is rotate this over, and I'm going to look at the crank. Anytime I see a number, I'm going to pull a number off that crank, and then I'm going to look it up online, figure out exactly what this thing is, and I'll get back to you on that in a second. But so, 8. Spin it all the way around, find any numbers you can off of it. You don't exactly know which one you're looking for. It's important to figure it out. Alright, so I ran the numbers from the heads, I ran the numbers from the crank. The crank is a stock crank. As far as the pistons go, I mean, I wouldn't know unless I pulled the heads off. But as far as the heads go, they're not the heads that came on it. They are off of a 350 small block, not a 400. I looked into it because honestly, this is my first 400. I've actually never worked on one of these. Apparently, though, the heads that came on the 400 weren't great. So a lot of people commonly swapped over to something from a 350. But the bore size of the 400 is so big, it makes the cylinders, or the bores, basically Siamese. So they're all basically touching each other, which I guess creates a bunch of steam from the water passages that were next to them. So if you're going to switch to this style head, you need to drill like 6 holes in each head for steam ports. Otherwise, you tend to get really hot spots around those cylinders. It can cause detonation. In severe cases, it can cause overheating and cracking and other problems. So whether or not these had those holes drilled, I don't really know. I kind of don't want to take the heads off because I'd kind of like to know if this $300 engine will go into a car and just work just fine. It'd be really cool to know that. But if I do end up taking them off, there's a decent chance I'll look around for a used head or like a used aluminum head, just because it'd be kind of cool. So for now, what I'm going to do is put a new oil pan on it, probably a new oil pump because I'm already into it. Maybe not even necessarily a pan, maybe just the pan gasket, which is really why I took it off anyways, because I know that gasket looked horrible and was dry rotted. So I'll do that. I'll probably replace the water pump just cause, for good measure, and rebuild this car, and it'll be pretty much ready to go into another car. As far as this 400, like I said, I've never built a 400. I don't have a lot of experience with the 400. If you know anything about these, let me know in the comments, man. I'm dying to know more about this engine. Not so much this engine, but the 400 in general. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you run one, what kind of power you got out of it. And give me some suggestions on building it, and maybe I'll build it that way, and we'll kind of see where we go from there. So if you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully I showed you where a bunch of these numbers are, where you can find them, and hopefully when you buy an engine off Craigslist or for some random guy, they help you figure out exactly what you got. Really, that's it. I'll catch you on the next episode.